We really are not that far away now from Galaxy Unpacked, and Samsung have revealed that the Unpacked event is going to happen on July the 10th in Paris. Well, the two big main devices we expect to see are the Galaxy Z Fold 6 and the Galaxy Z Flip 6. But there might be a bit of a surprise as well here with a more budget version of a folding phone, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But let's talk about the Galaxy Z Fold 6, and there's not a lot to know because we kind of know it all already. The design could get a bit of a tweak finally, and we could see a change in the aspect ratio and the size of the display. And the biggest leak that we've had so far has come from Ice Universe, who shared some hands-on images of apparently what the Z Fold 6 is right next to the current Z Fold 5. And you can tell here that the Z Fold 6 definitely looks to have a wider cover display, and it looks a little bit more similar to the Magic V2. These hands-on images seem to have then been confirmed in renders that we've seen from OnLeaks, and it gives us a really good look at what might be changing. So that cover display and maybe the design of the phone itself. But the display is rumoured to be around about 6.4 inches, which is up just slightly from last year's 6.2 inches. And this also means that we'd see a new aspect ratio of 20:9. And I just hope this is happening because my biggest complaint of the Galaxy Z Fold is just that tall, thin cover display. It's quite uncomfortable to use and it's not actually very easy. So if we can get a bigger cover display that's a little bit wider, I am all for this. According to Ice Universe, the internal display will be staying at 7.6 inches, so not a huge change here. But Samsung allegedly have been able to shrink the crease just a little bit more this time round, and we're not sure how they've managed to do this, but this will answer the complaints that a lot of people have about foldables, that crease is just too prominent on the display. The design seems to be changing ever so slightly, and that rounded design seems to be taking a bit of a back seat here, and Samsung with the Z Fold 6 will bring it in line with the S24s and just give it a more boxed off square feel this time round. Again, we've seen some hands-on images here from Ice Universe of exactly how this could look in the form of a dummy unit. And you know what? I like this. I think that this makes the whole folding phone just look a little bit more sleek, and it looks a little bit more like a flagship phone does. And if those dummy units weren't enough, then Samsung Kazakhstan accidentally leaked what looks like a marketing image which shows you in its whole boxy glory the new Samsung Z Fold 6. Now, in terms of the camera, it will physically look a little bit different, but it'll be barely noticeable. There are a few conflicting reports about what the camera might be, but it seems to be that Samsung will be sticking with the exact same setup of the Z Fold 5. So a 50 megapixel main, that 10 megapixel telephoto with 3x optical zoom, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. There were rumors that there might be some flagship cameras of the S24 Ultra coming to the Z Fold 6, but if that's something you were hoping for, I don't think we're going to get it this time round because the camera setup pretty much seems to be the same. Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 is pretty certain to powering the Fold, and that will have 12 gigs of RAM, but with storage options, you'll get 256, 512, and 1 terabyte of storage. And with the colors, you'll get navy, light pink, silver shadow, and some online exclusives of crafted black and white. And that's according to Ross Young over on Twitter, but these names could change. And if you were hoping that these might just stay the same price as last year, sadly, it's probably not going to happen because the rumors are that there's going to be a $100 price increase on every single variant of the phones that you want to get, which means they'll have a starting price of $1,899, then a ridiculous $2,259 for that 1 terabyte option. But for all that money, you should be getting a 5% bigger battery, so how can you argue with that? I did mention at the start of the video that there could be a cheaper alternative to the Z Fold 6 this year and have a budget version. Now, the reason we think this is because internally there is a name for the Z Fold 6 called Q6, but there's also been another name floating around called the Q6. This was discovered by Win Future, and this could happen, but it's a little bit sketchy about what this phone could actually be all about. And the talk is that it could start at $800, but you would probably get a few compromises for that. So for example, you probably wouldn't get S Pen support, and I imagine that the chip running this would not be that Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, but it could happen, and this is exciting because a more budget-friendly folding phone is exactly what we need to start bringing the price down of these mammoth folding phones. Now, when it comes to the Z Flip 6 this year at Unpacked, I wouldn't hold your breath on there being a huge amount of change here, because last year with the Z Flip 5, that is where we got our big changes with that cover display getting a nice bump in its size. But this year, it seems like it's going to be very incremental updates. We've had renders of the Z Flip 6, and you have to look really carefully to notice any change here. The one design that you can see is the shape, so it should be a little bit more boxy and a bit more square, just bringing it in line with the Z Fold 6 change, but other than that, it will look almost identical to the Z Flip 5. That inner display should be staying the same at 6.7 inches, and the cover display staying the exact same at 3.4 inches, even though there has been some talk here to say that this could increase to 3.9 inches, according to Ross Young. Ross also gave us the colors for this year's Z Flip 6 as well, and there'll be 7 to pick from. There'll be mint, light blue, silver shadow, yellow, and some online exclusives of crafted black, white, and peach, and each of these phones is expected to get a $100 jump in its price as well, so starting at $1,099 for the 256 gig version and $1,199 for the 512 version, although there could be some pricing and storage deals similar to what we saw last year. The battery will get a small bump this year, so from 3,700 mAh to 4,000 mAh, and that's something that I had a complaint about last year, where the battery was not as good as it could have been, so I'm glad that Samsung have given us a little bit extra this year. Powering this, we're pretty certain again will be the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, but this time with 8 gigs of RAM. But the biggest change to the Z Flip 5 could come with its camera and a new 50 megapixel main sensor, and this would be a nice upgrade on what we already have. Sadly though, the ultra-wide camera is most likely to stay the same as last year's Z Flip 5 at 12 megapixels. I don't think there could be much more done with the Z Flip 6 this year. Maybe adding DeX support, or adding faster charging speeds, or maybe even adding a telephoto camera, but it seems very unlikely that any of that is going to happen. So a bigger cover display on the Z Fold 6, a new 50 megapixel main camera on the Z Flip 6, and potentially a cheaper budget Z Fold, which would be actually really exciting. But is it enough to entice you into this year's flips and folds, or maybe even swap your old flipping and folding Samsung phone for this year's new lineup? Well, let me know in the comments below. Before you head off, make sure you subscribe to the Android Authority YouTube channel, and if you do that, then I will see you in the next video.